This video is my way of organizing my thoughts on the templates. And previously, I've taken sort of a haphazard approach to creating this geometry, so I want to organize it a little bit better. I started drafting in high school in the 80s. And really got into manufacturing in the 90s, so pretty much for the last 27 years have been building kind of this database of information. So in my opinion, engineers don't get enough drafting detailing, and drafting and detailing don't get enough engineering. So the intersection is mechanical design. So one of the things that I would consider this kind of edutainment, that we would have an educational but entertainment, that you watch this, you let it sink in, you process the information, and as we're starting to develop our parts and assemblies, we're eventually going to have the drawings, our working documents for these components for these systems. So I went to Solidworks. If you're in Solidworks, you can go up to and search for the terms. So document templates, part drawing assembly documents. There are defaults that we start with, but almost immediately you'll find that you want to modify. So the main one is the units. And then do you want to be in the ANSI standard or the ISO? ANSI is the sanctioning body. ASME, it actually produces the standard. So you'll see ANSI or ASME. ISO is pretty much world organization. And then some of the things, visual and also properties in the background. So we're going to be looking a lot at the options in these templates. In the introductory video, we kind of touched on these. I always have the issue because on my desktop I load versions piggyback, and a lot of times they tie back to previous versions. So if that's the situation that you have, then you'll see things tied back one or two versions and think, well, why did it do that? I just installed a new one. The reality is that it's trying to stay consistent and use what's already established without making you repoint everything. So the system options apply to all documents, current and future. They'll pretty much stay the way you set them. There are some things that kind of shift if you get a document from somebody else that has different settings. There are some things that I believe in the background tend to change, but I can't really document those as hey, this happened. So I see it on a regular basis, and a lot of times it's, well, why did that happen? So the document properties apply only to the currently active document. So we're looking at creating kind of two things here where we can save our system options to the task pane SOLIDWORKS resources, SOLIDWORKS settings wizard, which is referred to back up here. And then document properties get saved into the template, which is what we want to end up doing. So for our parts and assembly templates in the options, we would be looking at the documents and our symbol for the options, the little gear. You can click directly on that gear or do the pull down, and under the pull down you'll see options, the add-ins, some customization type stuff. So units and the standard. And once we start making changes, then the standard will develop a dash mod on it. Other things that we would want to save in our templates are the file properties. And if we do the task pane custom properties, that's a user interface that we develop that is a little more approachable, that it will still write to the file properties, and existing files that haven't used it previously, it will is something that can be brought in and utilized to update those items. Do we want to see the origin, the blue origin, as opposed to we go into a sketch and there will always be a red origin? The backgrounds and scenes, the gradient, the plain white, the 3 faded, all of those. Icon sizes, and then in the customized keyboard shortcuts, the command manager, always recommend that we lock the command manager in toolbars. That will keep them from accidentally flying somewhere else. Mainly we clicked on it and had a little twitch and it jumped out. Heads up tools, the strip of icons across the top of the work area. The S key tools, which I have adopted more since the command manager is now collapsible. And the mouse gestures, which I still haven't used, but I know quite a few people that that's all they use. So I want to make those accessible to you and be able to work with what you prefer. Kind of the rule for creating a template: anything that you're changing manual more than a few times should be added to or create the template. If you find that you're going and constantly changing the units, constantly changing the number of decimal places, the tolerances, that's something that should be written into the template. And because the drawings can associate the file properties of the parts, we want to take advantage of that information to save us some time and have that data, that metadata, those file properties travel with the parts, and we can use them, reuse them in other assemblies, other components with other components. Alright, so customizing the sheet format. The drawing is the sheet format. The document takes and holds on to those document properties. So we can load a sheet format to match your company's standard. And if you create, try to avoid overwriting the standard. Alright, the default. Basically, that gives you a safety net. If we set all of the geometric dimensioning, tolerancing, surface finish, I didn't know it couldn't include the annotations. Cannot include leaders. You have to set those manually each time then. And then drawing templates contain notes that link to properties. Properties extract information from the part. System properties are automatically available. And you enter custom properties in the custom tab for drawing part assembly as appropriate. So the sheet format is the basis. Now, one of the things that you'll need to be aware of, and the big orange here, if you are not comfortable navigating to the software files, ask for help. There is a lot of file information, and so the C drive, typically, program files, Solidworks Corp, whatever version number you're on, 2022, 2023. Solidworks, language English, you'll find the tutorial templates. That one will typically show up on the default installation. Not so common the weldment profiles we would be looking for, and our bill of material if we save custom bill of materials. On the C drive, Solidworks data and number, that is the toolbox database. We won't go into that one very much, but you will see it at the top level there. The other one is the program data, is typically a hidden folder. So if you go to Windows File Explorer on your View tab, come over to the Show Hide. I like to see the file name extensions because we're going to be looking at SLD PRTs, ASM DOTs, the DRW SLD, DRT. So there's a lot of file extensions that will help us determine what we're looking at. And the hidden items will show us program data. So program data, SolidWorks version. We would be interested in the design library, the language and sheet format, the geometric tolerancing symbols and properties. I think I needed to indent that a little bit more, but we'll double check. And these two need to be in the same folder, at least on the file locations. Those, if one or the other all of a sudden doesn't work, it's because they've gotten separated. All right, so we'll look at that a little later. The templates folder is kind of the default, not tutorial, templates. All right, so, and then language folder, English, and the custom properties for that interface to write to the file properties that we talked a little bit about. A lot going on here. All right, so that's one of the reasons that we kind of want to introduce this and just say, let it digest. If you need to find something, then go look for it. All right, so the ASME Standards, the Y14.1 is your decimal inch drawing sheet and size. There is ones that have an M, that would be the metric, and 14.100 is the engineering drawing practices. 14.2 line conventions and lettering. Orthographic and pictorial views, 14.3. Not sure if it was the 14.41 that jumped it over, but you know, pretty much go right to the main one that we'll be working with is 14.5, dimensioning and tolerancing. All right, so a lot of times that geometric gets tied into there, but really we're looking at the overall tolerancing for our components. 14.6, the screw thread representations, 14.24, types and applications of engineering drawings, and then 14.41, digital product definition, data practices. So that is intended as we move to more paperless, but we've been talking about paperless for 30 years, so it is progressing, but the shop is still, it doesn't matter how clean, how good of a working environment, it can still has coolant, it still has lubrication, it still has the occasional coffee that if I spill it on my coffee stain on my drawing, I can print out another one if I spill it on a tablet or a computer, usually not so happy. Alright, so our sheet sizes, and this is out of the technical drawing with engineering graphics. We have the A size sheet, B size, C size, D size. So basically we're taking a standard letter size 8.5 by 11, and if we rotate it over to the portrait, which really you can you could set all of these to portrait and make a title block if you wanted. A size is probably the most common as far as a presentation. But if we take this portrait version and flip it to where there's two side by side, we get the B. If we rotate the B and flip it and double it, then we get the C size, and then rotate the C size and double it, we get the D. E and above, you do run into, but those just go into pretty much whatever size you need and what your printer is capable of. You could make a drawing block that is as long as you need if the printer is capable of generating it. So the ISO starts at A4 and is comparable to the A size, and then the 3, B, and 2, and goes to A0 and above is pretty much whatever you need. On the Solidworks side, on the templates, and we'll run through this again, but probably one of the most common is if the checkbox for only show standard formats, if we're in ISO or ANSI, a lot of times I just when we're setting it, it gets set to ISO, so it's going to show those ISO standards. Standard sheet format unchecked is going to show all of these, including the A0s, and based on the ANSI standard, based on the ISO standard. Alright, so templates are an iterative process. You have the required and the desired, and you can expect multiple revisions to get it working the way you want. So you start off with a direction, you implement it, you put it out on to the company, or you use it individually for a couple of weeks. You find out what works and what doesn't, what else other information is going to get built in, and then it gets modified, and after so many revisions it will become the one that you use. After a year or so, you'll find you need something else, and then you'll have to go remember what you did and why you did it, and come back and relearn the process once again. Alright, so the other thing that we're really interested in is the third angle and the first angle. So third angle projection, you will see on this side, and we talked a little bit about that in the intro. It's based on the position of the component. That with first angle, you're placing the part in quadrant 1 and looking at it in those directions. And third angle, you're placing it in quadrant 3 of the Cartesian coordinate system, and we're looking at something like this. So if you go into the drawing and you go to a standard view and your isometric is down here instead of up here, that lets you know your first angle. We need to go to the sheet properties, and we'll change it from first to third. If you're in a country or organization that uses first angle, then you'll stay with that. All right, so templates. If you're the single user, and I need reasons to stay. So with the single user, our default locations are okay. You're using only one computer, one user, and it's fine. Stay with the default locations. Just realize that they're going to be several levels deep. All right, so the multiple users and reasons to convert to the network and cloud, depending on the security level, and the cloud storage has gotten a lot more secure over the last 10 years than when it first came out. There was a lot of reservations. So the local area network, or LAN, was kind of the go-to before. Now we have Google Drive, which is probably what I'll be working with, but I have OneDrive from my Microsoft account and Dropbox from my work account. All right, and these are easy to share across computers. Easier to find, that when we create these folders on the cloud drive, they're not buried several levels deep. Updates happen for all users, so in our group of 8 or 9 people, if we find something in one of the templates or need to make an adjustment, I update it, and next time everybody goes into it, they're using the most current. The other reason is security. Businesses and education often do not allow permissions to write to those program files and program data folders. There can be very annoying to have it. You have to elevate. You have to get permission to write to that folder, even though it's something that you need. IT can set group permissions to give you access to the Solidworks folders, but that really doesn't happen very often. So it's another step that, if we can manage it out of the cloud and have that remote access available across computers, then you can set it up the pretty much the way you want it. All right, so the templates, we have the defaults, and they're usually enough, but usually need a bit more. There's always something that needs a little tweak, or that you're going to change. So back to the recommendation that if you change it more than a couple times, it probably needs to be written to the template. When we do the default modified, now these are going into the drawing templates. I need to clarify that a little bit. The default modified, add and remove fields or parts of the title block as necessary. We can do a simple, which has manual data entry, but because it's not tied to the parts, you'll have to re-enter that data if you create a different drawing or use it for a different project, that component. And then heavily modified reflects the needs of the organization. So the way that I look at it is standards are recommendations to provide consistency across the industry. Standards are valuable recommendations that may be modified as needed, but are generally adhered to. So you want to go into SolidWorks. So let me switch back over here and we'll jump into SolidWorks. So this is the part that I created for the example, and not sure why I stayed in blue, so I set a screen background somewhere. So we'll have to look at that one. Let me get out of that and not save it. And let's see, it's warning me since this was saved in Google Drive and my hidden files are shown. Anything with a little tilde, $, sign, and intro or whatever the part name is, that's a system file. You're not going to have to worry about those. It's active while we're in the software, and then it pretty much just gets removed as needed. All right, so our options, we'll take a quick look. So for this settings, and these will generally be the same. So there's a few that we want to look at again. And I did try to do the reset. So be careful with the reset. It does reset most everything. So input the dimension value. Yes, we want, when we place a dimension, we want that modify box to pop up. I want to see the confirmation corner, which says accept or exit. We want to auto show the property manager, so it switches from in the manager tree from the features to the property as needed. Auto size, a little bit. And then we're not doing too much with MBD, templates, 3D PDS. Again, the logic of the mark all parts and assembly dimensions for import into drawings by default. We can import all dimensions and we can import mark dimensions. If everything's marked, it does the same thing as the import all. So I still have that problem with the logic. The main thing is on my videos, you will see that your dimensions are probably in black and mine are kind of purplish. So that's the changes. And then what happens is the one that I mark for dimension, or mark those dimensions for import, when I bring them into the drawing and tell it to import entities, then those are usually something that's tolerance, something that needs to be checked, double-checked, rechecked. And it actually does have a little more value to me at that point. Let's see, anything, not seeing too much. Let's see, custom property used as revision, then we'll go revision. Display styles, hidden lines removed. The standard area and hatch fill. And this is kind of a legacy because the materials carry, I believe the materials carry the hatch with them now. And then performance, no, nothing really there. Automatic solve. For assemblies after 2,000 components, probably we'll drop that down a little bit when we get to the assemblies. The colors, wow, that one's interesting. Okay, that was probably why I was in blue. So let's go to something that's a little more visible, and that one doesn't get used too much. So magenta, pick whatever color is comfortable for you. All right, and then be careful if you need to. make adjustments, change one at a time, see what it does, and then you can modify as needed. The background's light, medium, and dark. So right now we're in light. I will just change the basics, default and classic. I noticed in Windows 11, this is still my Windows 10 computer, but Windows 11 has a slightly different icon look to them. Back in 2016, they went to a icon structure that was generally not accepted. Mainly it was kind of dramatic change, but visually it was a lot, to me it was a lot easier on the eyes. So default scene, that was a link to the help. So it popped out a help box and said setting the default scene, tells you where to go, and we'll do that a little later. Or we can make it plain. Viewport background is the color set above, so kind of a gray. And then use specified color for drawing paper, and that should be somewhere down in here. Drawing paper color blue. Okay, so that's why it was showing up in blue. So I don't, let's see, disable image in sheet background. Alright, so that'll work. On the sketch, yes, we want to auto-rotate. No, we don't want to fully define. Prompt to set driven state. Pretty much everything in here is as good as the default, so you can look through those. Prompt to set driven state, set driven by default. And then relations, enable snapping, and snap only when grid is displayed. So we'll find the grid down a little bit further. So all those look pretty good. Nothing really on the display, unless you're encountering problems or issues with the operation of the software. Some of these we don't even really need to worry about. The default selection would be the box, and wireframe and HLV. Selection through transparency. Transparency can create some interesting selections, so sometimes we want to, but there's always the shift and select. Nothing really on performance, nothing really on assemblies. We're not doing external references just yet. Default templates, always use the default templates. So this is one when I updated or reset, it got lost. So if I just tell it to prompt user to select, what I would want to see about doing, and I need to probably go back through that list. So if we go with the tutorial, that's fine. So these should already be populated, and these are going to be all defaults. But if I tell it to prompt, if there's additional items in there, then I can select for them. Alright, the file locations. This is the big master list of where to find all of those items. So if we do convert, or when we convert to a cloud or network location, I'm going to have to go through and identify some of these locations. The folders, several of the items will only accept one location, and most will accept multiples. So we'll save that for that discussion. But document templates, the BOM templates, let's see, custom property files, the design library, sheet formats, and probably one or two others that we would want to work with there. We would change. Right now I'm going to leave them at the wherever they're set at the defaults. Alright, the feature manager. Again, there's things that I like to use. You can turn these on and off as needed. So annotations show, solid bodies show, surface bodies automatic. Most of these are going to be automatic. If they don't exist, they don't pop up. If you create something that has that when we start equations, then you'll see the equations folder show up. Default planes, the origin, sensors, make those automatic if I create a sensor. And I'm not overly fond of the history. Pretty much keep a running check of what I've done, and I just haven't gotten into using the history, so I'll make that automatic or hide. Spin box increments, how we want to, when we use the arrow keys, how we want to see that move. The all-important reverse mouse wheel zoom direction. And then various adjustments, auto recover, and again the auto recover information goes down a couple levels, is also in app data. And if you're in a secure environment or working on projects that have non-disclosures, any kind of level of security, the auto recover and backup copies need to be someplace that are accessible, because you don't want to have a lot of unsecured data floating around out there. Touch mode, if you have the touch screen, the whole wizard in the toolbox, and File Explorer, what we want to see in the File Explorer. Searching, indexing, index only when computer is idle. There was a couple of versions that had different terminology, and it was interesting when it would start to index and really didn't know what it was doing. So glad they updated that. Collaboration, multi-user environment has some additional tools. The messages and last messages. Import. The 3D interconnect, so if I use a step file, Parasolid, something that comes in from another source, another program typically, then 3D interconnect will create a connection that if that file gets overwritten and updated, it will update the geometry. For some of our CAM, the manufacturing programs, it doesn't read all of the geometry as it does in imported. So a lot of times I'll turn that off, and if I think I need it or I want to use it for a particular item, then I'll go in and turn it back on. So that's one you can keep an eye out on. And we'll go through the settings for exporting. Usually I just worry about those when I'm actually performing the export. Okay, so that sets our system on the Save SolidWorks setting wizard. Then we can set the save settings, restore settings. If I've gone through those and I'm happy with those, then let's see, that's going somewhere. Let's browse to Drive, and I already created a folder, so went into File Explorer and created a system folder. So gives a date and the settings, everything that's going to be output, and then finish, and then confirmation. All right. So we'll pause the video here and come back with starting to set up the part and assembly templates. Maybe.